Thank you, President. Excuse me. I move that this House calls for an urgent intervention into our education system to reverse the decline in education outcomes for Western Australian children by specifically addressing A, the decline in education standards in Western Australia as outlined in the most recent PISA study, B, the administrative and non-teaching workloads teachers are required to perform and its impact on teaching outcomes, C, the overuse of screens in classroom teaching at young ages, D, the impact of progressive ideologies on children, and E, the outcomes delivered by the current curriculum compared to 25 years ago.
Members, the Honourable Rod Caddies has moved that motion and the question is order. Members, the Honourable Rod Caddies has moved that motion and the question is the motion be agreed. The Honourable Rod Caddies.
Thank you, President. Now, One Nation is moving this motion for one simple reason. We care about the future of this state. Our future, as much as it's a cliche, is our children. Now, education is the most important gift we can give to our children. Being able to read, write, do maths, it's the core skills that they need to achieve anything they want in life. I mean, anyone will tell you that if you don't have, reading skills and ability to do maths, you really fall way behind. So placing a high emphasis on education is really a key to a successful society. Now, teaching kids how to think, not what to think, is really what we should be doing. Here in Western Australia, it seems that's sadly no longer the case. Our kids are going backwards. The data proves it, the teachers know it, the parents see it every day. I talk to parents all the time. They feel like their kids aren't getting to the point they need to be. Every employer can tell you that the standards are slipping from what they're seeing coming through. Now, the International Program for Student Assessment, or PISA, found that numeracy and literacy scores have significantly declined since 2000 across the OECD countries. Now, I'll quote them here. PISA 2022 tested nearly 700,000 15-year-old students in 81 OECD member countries and partner economies on mathematics, reading and science. Overall, on average, the PISA 2022 assessment saw an unprecedented drop in performance across the OECD compared to 2018. Mean performance fell by 10 score points in reading and by almost 15 score points in maths. The decline in performance can only partially be attributed to the COVID-19 pandemic, with falling scores in reading, science and maths already apparent prior to 2018. Now, note that last sentence, the decline was already happening before COVID, so hopefully the government won't be using that as an excuse. That said, COVID policy decisions by the WA government also did impact children significantly. The consequences of that are not yet known. Now, which is why we really need a COVID Royal Commission, but that's a motion for another day. Now, it doesn't matter that WA is not experiencing the worst decline. The part that matters is the decline itself. We shouldn't be comparing ourselves to how badly other places are doing. We should be really striving to be the best, like places like Singapore and parts of China, countries in our neighbourhood that really put big emphasis on their education and take it very seriously. Now, as I said, we shouldn't have low expectations on our children, because low expectations, produce usually low outcomes. This is exactly what we're getting here in Australia and in Western Australia. The facts are clear. Kids are not performing as well in numeracy and literacy as they could be. Reading, writing and maths, they haven't changed. 2 + 2 still equals 4. Nothing's changed there. Reading still involves understanding words and sentences to form communication. But something has changed in terms of our children being able to master these skills. I'm not sure if members think things are not that bad. Maybe they should talk to some teachers and parents and that, but I'm sure many of you agree there is a bit of a problem there. Now, teachers tell me they're expected to do huge amounts of work and it takes the focus away from what they're meant to be doing, that's actually teaching the kids. They tell me they have to comply with endless reporting and administrative requirements, which seem to have little purpose. But here's the thing that really gets to them the most. Regardless of how much data they collect and report, nothing ever seems to change. They gather the data showing kids are falling behind, they report it, and then they watch nothing being done about that. No extra resourcing, no support, no changes, and I think they just feel demoralised by that. So that speaks to the part of what is going on. Teachers are not happy with the admin and the non-teaching workload. Now that is a problem. If your workforce resents the orders being given by management, then you're going to get poor outcomes, whether that's in teaching or any other industry. When people don't respect what they're having to do, they fail to succeed in them outcomes. So maybe the government needs to have an education department that actually responds to the needs of the teachers in the schools instead of burying them in all this extra paperwork. Maybe I'm being too harsh on the education department. Maybe they also know what is wrong and want to make these changes, but they're not getting the attention maybe from this WA Labor government. I don't know. This is something that needs to be looked at. Another thing that adds to the workload is class sizes and the quality of the classroom itself. One of my first questions in this place was about class sizes, something that the State School Teachers Union had been complaining about for a long time. I think it was on the 22nd of May 2025, I asked if the Minister would commit to reducing class sizes to address the union concerns, and I got the usual evasive answer. We've talked about answers to questions, and this was the answer. 2 to 3, class sizes averages in 2025 continue to be below the maximum size limits for all specified configurations. The Minister will continue to work with the State School Teachers Union of WA to address a range of issues. The Cook Labor Government remains committed to the School Education Act Employees, Teachers and Administrators General Agreement 2023 and to reducing workload for teachers through progressing the workload reduction initiatives, including the establishment of the Workload Intensification Task Force. Now, Workload Intensification Task Force, I'm sure that made teachers feel much better, hearing that. But teachers and students will be waiting a long time for improvement in class sizes. They're even waiting a long time for existing overcrowded classrooms that are underfunded. As I said, even yesterday, I think I mentioned it, demountables, these classrooms, we know, the population growth and we know what we're expecting, yet we've got teachers operating and kids operating out of demountables. Now, I will quote from the West Australian Bethany High on the 4th of April 2026. As previously revealed by the West, at the start of this year, only 3 schools had enjoyed new air conditioning since the $89 million commitment was made in March last year. 2 more are in the design stage. A briefing note prepared for the Education Minister, Sabine Winton, revealed the program of work was subject to change due to the potential complexities and may not fully cover every school. I mean, $89 million, 3 schools. What hope do we have when WA Labor can't even get air conditioning into these schools, not getting them installed? And the fact that this information had to be acquired through freedom of information says a lot. FOIs exist to stop governments and people from hiding things. Usually resorting to FOIs, it usually means you didn't get an honest answer that you asked in the first place. You didn't get the information you needed. So aircon in classrooms means that kids are more settled. It means that teachers makes their job easier for teaching. I'm sure if the aircon here in this parliament broke down, it would be fixed within a day. So demountable classrooms, as I said, seem to be the only solution this government can think of, which is really a lazy response to the predictable population. As I said, we know we're growing in population, but we're throwing up these, transportable buildings. We need more schools, more teachers, better facilities. These things matter when it comes to education outcomes. We can't neglect this. I've seen reports, whether it be the Esperance School, Como High School, these schools were falling apart from the reports I read. I think everyone should be able to agree that we should take these concerns very seriously that the teachers are bringing before us. We should investigate if the administrative and reporting burdens are contributing to the decline in the outcomes of our students that I'm talking about. These outcomes that are failing us, they're going down. But of course, there are other issues at play here, and some of those issues are outside of the school system. We have parental attitudes and values, changes in society, and the impact that rapid change on children. These all matter. But let's talk about screen time. Screen time was not really a thing we had to worry about 25 years ago. TV was limited compared to what we have now. Kids are on, screens all the time, whether that be TV or their little gadgets. Now, we know also that there's just endless amounts of little short videos full of nonsense and endless streams of binge watch. And I've read some reports lately on what that's doing to children's brains and in their ability to learn properly. And it's called brain rot for a reason. So I accept we can't change the fact that current technologies exist. We're not going to completely be able to stop them. I accept we can't control what parents do at home. But our education system could ban, some screens in the classroom. I'm told screens are now a big part of everyday teaching, every part of the, classroom activity. Kids are on screens as part of their schoolwork instead of using pen and paper in many instances. Now, I think we intuitively know that screen time is not good for kids. I've just outlined that, but I think all of us would naturally believe that too much time, as parents we know that. Some early adopters of screen use in primary education, such as Sweden, are changing course because I think they identified that, they seen the problem, and I'll quote from the Swedish government website: "Pupils' ability to read and understand what they read is the foundation of their learning in all school subjects. The Swedish government's school policy aims to get back to the basics and re-establish a strong knowledge-based school system with the focus of early grades being on basic skills such as reading, writing and arithmetic. Digital learning aids should only be introduced into teaching at an age where they encourage rather than hinder pupils' learning. Scientific studies show that screen-free environments provide better conditions for children to develop relationships, concentrate and learn to read and write. It is therefore important for digital learning aids to only be introduced in teaching at an age when they encourage, I think I've doubled up there maybe, rather than hinder pupils' learning. The use of such aids must therefore be carefully considered." Now, I encourage members to visit the site I quoted. They talked about schools being mobile phone free and investing more in school libraries, and I think I do recall years ago we did make some mobile free rules here for WA, which was probably a good thing, and we did contribute, my party, back in them earlier contributions. Now, this is not abandoning technology, but the fact that pen and paper and physical books can help comprehension and focus. They have seen that learning outcomes improve with pen and paper, as written there for the Swedish example. So instead of just giving in and encouraging more screen use, maybe we should think about what actually works. There's other examples we could use. Instead, we could get kids to read a book. They suggest kids just want a book being read to them on screen. This approach is being promoted by, our own Premier Roger Cook. And I'll quote him here. It was from the West, I should say. I'm quoting the West of the Premier. From an article by Jessica Page from the 24th of March 2024 in relation to the Premier's reading challenge. Screen time versus story time, or why not both? That's the concept being tested by the Premier's reading challenge. It's acknowledgement that reading continues to evolve as the technology and digital technology continues to influence our lives, Roger Cook said. The Premier said reading continues to evolve. Like, I'm not sure what that means unless he's referring to the declining literacy. It's not, I mean, maybe it's more like devolve, over the years that's been going, because it's constantly been going down. Our figures have gone down, not up. So that's not evolving, and if it is evolving, it's not evolving to somewhere we want to be. So let's think about the impact the technology on kids, making them reliant on screens, and AI will not end well, I don't believe. I think everyone here can agree we should investigate if increased screen time in classrooms is contributing to that decline in the educational outcomes. Maybe we need to make schools screen-free zones and return to the pen and paper for at least the early years of education. So, not so much the older kids, but maybe at least the younger ones. Now, I'll address the fourth point of the motion now, and that's the impact of progressive ideologies on children. Kids are not dumb. They're certainly smart enough to exploit adults in different ways to get what they want, given the chance. We've all been to school. We've all had times where we've been working out ways to sort of avoid doing things, and I know I used to do it. Maybe I'm different. I don't know. I'm sure we all try to avoid homework, and so it's easy, but it's easy to exploit these ideologies. These days, kids are being told they're doomed because the planet's going to, be too hot to live on. Most understand that's not really true, but they'll go along with it. They can use it for, being lazy. They can argue, why bother? The planet's doomed anyway. There's all sorts of things they can. Kids are told they're living on stolen land at every opportunity, and their country is somehow bad. They can use this as an excuse for rejecting authority, traditions and institutions. They're told that a man can become a woman and that some races, religions and culture should be treated different to others. Of course, kids will exploit that as well to get attention, claim to be a victim or identify as something else. You can get away with anything. You can identify as anything these days. Now, affirmative, permissive and anti-authoritarian progressive ideologies may be contributing to the decline in the education outcomes. Learning requires discipline, focus and commitment, and it can be hard. Progressive ideologies are appropriate for children if they result in kids choosing not to learn. School should not be a place for ideological indoctrination. Some kids are even pushing back because they reject them ideologies. I have students approaching me telling me they've been disciplined or disadvantaged for expressing their own views, which...
Order. There's too much background noise. The Honourable Rod Caddy.
Yeah, so as I was saying, I've had students approach me telling me they've been, disadvantaged, been disciplined for expressing their own views which are contrary to those of administrators and that, teaching these ideologies. So I've had parents contact me telling me their primary age school children are required to learn the second verse of the national anthem in Noongar. And I'm not going to get into the details of the problem with that. Well, that again, you can decide if there's a problem there. Now, and I'll give you an example of something, being taught. I was a father rang me the other day, sent me a link, showed me the link, was taught to his 5-year-old boy, and I've got the link to the video on YouTube. And it was a story time of some Indigenous people telling the story of how the big white men come in, thud, 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 grabbed these black kids and dragged them away from their parents, from their families. This was taught to 5-year-old. His 5-year-old, stolen generation. This is being taught to 5-year-olds, that the white man came in, stole their children, grabbed them by the hand, dragged them away, This child now is having to sleep with his mother and he's a white child, these big white men are going to come and steal me. Can't sleep on his own now, is fearful. Being taught to, do 5-year-olds need to be taught this sort of ideology? I'm not saying stolen generation, we can teach that in classrooms, but not at 5 years old. We shouldn't be telling these stories that are making kids go home in fear and not want to sleep on their own. So people are losing faith in the education system, as evidenced by the huge growth in homeschooling. Maybe we need to return to common sense, discipline and structure and reject silly woke concepts which will result in kids losing respect for adults. Now, as I just said, I'll take that interjection. I've already said, stolen generation, call it what you like. You can teach that, but at 5 years old, it's not appropriate to be teaching 5-year-old about them things. And especially if you want to go have a look at the video, I'll share that link for you to look at. So, the last part of my motion.
Order, member